Welcome to the Soil Inventory Talk Show. My name is Grace Roiro, a farmer and an agronomist. Today, I am privileged to have one of the agronomists in town, and he will introduce himself. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Kwa majina, I'm James Mwangi. I'm an agronomist by profession, and we're here to discuss about agrochemicals, as Grace will tell us.
Yeah, thank you very much, James. So, last time we discussed about the ignorance that is around using of agrochemicals, and one of the things we noticed is we do not read the labels that we have on our containers. That is maybe the pesticide, the fungicide, or whatever agrochemical that you're using in the field. So today we'll basically narrow down and make it as brief and we'll as brief as we can so that we can get enlightened, and also don't we are not here to give too much information that we cannot digest, but we are here to give to discuss basically and have a discussion that is beneficial, that will enlighten us as farmers and maybe even as people who are consumers of these goods. Yeah, karibuni tena na tena. So today I want us to speak about pesticide, and I understand there's a difference between pesticide and insecticide. At times in the field, you'll think the pesticide is the insecticide, yeah, but they are different. We allow James to help us with the definitions or the difference.
Okay, so today we want to learn what a pesticide is and the difference that there is between a pesticide and an insecticide. So, a pesticide encompasses the insecticide, the fungicide, and the herbicide. So it's an umbrella under which the three fall. So, and then the insecticide is specific because it only targets the insect pest. So it has to be an insect, and there are various classes of insects. So for it to be called an insecticide, it must be the target pest must be an insect. And for the pesticide, it's broad. It encompasses the three that we've just talked about.
Yeah, sure, true. Because the pesticide, you see the herbs that we control using the herbicide in the field. They are also in that category of the pests. They are things that we do not want in our farms, basically. So thank you very much. So the other time, James, when we were discussing, we felt that there was ignorance. There was a lot of ignorance going around our farmers, because one of the things is there's a lot of residue in our products in our farms, and maybe this we might handle later. Are there governing bodies that are there that are supposed to regulate this? Because you find farmers will spray on Monday and the food or maybe the product is in the market on Friday. Yeah, that's a very short period, considering that some of these chemicals have indicated that you take at least 30 days or maybe 14 days before harvest. So what can you say about that?
Okay, Grace is very right that you're supposed to wait for a particular period of time before you can harvest after spraying your pesticide. So uh, it's what we call the pre-harvest interval. You're supposed to spray and then wait for, and every pesticide or every agrochemical has indicated the amount of time you're supposed to wait before you can avail the produce into the market or to the consumer. That's the PHI, and it's very, very important.
Yeah, sure. It's very important also for our health. And also, one of the things is farmers should also take care of their health. As much as we want to take care of the health of the consumer, also the farmer, that means they should put on protective gear, they should follow all the instructions. Now, James, beyond all the guidelines and following all these, there's one question that we also want you to handle, or maybe we'll have a discussion, is how frequently do you spray, or what's the right timing of the, or we can start with the pesticide. What's the right timing of the pesticide? Do you just, or the insecticide, sorry.
The insecticide.
Do you just spray because you are growing cabbages and you hear there are cutworms? Do I just spray on the onset? If they start germinating, I just spray, 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 spray? Or is there a procedure, or when is the right time? So that you know one of the things, sorry. before you answer this, one of the things farming helps us with is budgeting. And when you're doing all this production, you need to know what is your input and what do you get as income, so that you can have a balance. And one of the things is budgeting. And one of the ways you can cut costs is by applying these chemicals when necessary. So when is this right time, James?
So I'll begin by saying, for particularly the insects, and Grace mentioned about the cutworms. As a farmer and you've been practicing, or even you're starting, cutworms will always attack the crop at a younger stage. So you can spray at that stage as to prevent. That's the only time I can say you can spray an insect to prevent. And that's because we know that cutworms will actually attack at that particular time. So spray as to prevent the cutworms. Or you can, if you had sprayed previously and you had no issues with cutworms, you can wait until you see they've started cutting the young seedlings from the bottom. Then from that you can now spray. Otherwise, any other insect, we can talk of the tutor absolutas, we can talk of the fall armyworm. The instructions will always be given on the label. For others, one of the instructions they will normally indicate is that you are supposed, as a farmer, to scout your farm and see whether you have that particular pest that you want to control, and then from there they'll even give you the how many times you're going to spray, how many times you're going to apply that particular pesticide.
Yeah, beautiful. I love one thing he said. Basically, I love everything, but picking up scouting. Scouting is very, very important. So scouting is James basically is going to the farm and checking for the pests.
Yeah.
And you do not spray because you have one pest. For example, I have a whole acre of maybe cabbages or maybe any other crop, and I find only one pest. Is that reason enough for me to go to the agrovet and pick my my insecticide and spray?
It's not. It's just like having cockroaches in your house. When you have just one, is there a need to go and buy an insecticide worth 300? So you have to do, as a farmer Grace mentioned, you have to cut costs as much as possible. So that's what is known as the economic threshold. That is the point where the pest can now guarantee or will now demand you to manage it, maybe using pesticides. There are other forms of control of pesticides, and Grace will talk about the IPM, the integrated pest management. So you can decide to congregate biological controls, because you can also pick up the pest as you're scouting and just squash it and kill it. Or now you can, if now the pests have reached the economic threshold, then from that point now you can decide to use maybe the insecticides, or now just integrate all of the controls, all the various controls that you can use.
Thank you very much, James. So one of the things we know, if you're dealing with insects, you do not spray because you just want to spray. One of the things that is very important is scouting. You scout, that is, you go to your farm and you move around and check for those insects, or the harmful ones. You can just find insects in the field. So they are the ones that we refer to them as pests. For example, what we said as the cutworms. So you go to the field, you scout. What if you just find one, you can just pick it. That's a biological control, and just squash it and kill it. But if you find more than, that's what you're calling the economic threshold, a population that will guarantee spraying. That's a population that is worrying, that you go, you find one, after a certain number of crops you find another and another. That guarantees you to now think of a control method. And there are very many control methods, by the way. What we are discussing right now is basically synthetic, or we can call it conventional agriculture. This is the use of chemicals. Yes, but there are also farmers who prefer
biological ways to control the pests.
That is organic way, the organic way, or you just use organic
pesticides.
Yes. So basically, we at a we agree that we do not need to just spray anyhowly. We need to scout, and that scouting guarantees us if we need to spray or not. And if you're not knowledgeable enough, what I say as a farmer, you can reach out to an agronomist. Some of our agrochemicals or our agrovets are well equipped, that they have agronomists in their agrovets. But in case you do not find one there who can advise you, it's important that you look for an agronomist near you, so that they can also advise you, and also they can also let you know what product to use for certain crops and certain plants. And even as you buy the products, make sure you read the labels and see what you need to, how you're supposed to handle the product, how you're supposed to spray it, the intervals, as James told us, the product, the labels are there, the intervals and all these things. So James, now we have spoken about the insects.
Mm-hmm.
I would also want us to touch on the diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe specifically one of the diseases that has been troublesome, maybe on my side, might be the fungal disease. Would you enlighten on how frequent, or maybe the right time of spraying, or do I just spray because I know maybe a certain crop, for example the potatoes, should I just spray from the day they germinate till the day I harvest, or what happens? Kindly enlighten us.
Uh, Thank you so much for that question. So when it comes to diseases, you mean I'll still send you back to the user's manual, because every fungicide has got the indications of when you're supposed to start spraying and how often you're supposed to start spraying. But if it's not indicated, it's wise to start as early as possible and use a preventive fungicide, just to prevent your crop from being infected with that disease. Secondly, when now the crop has already been infected, what do? You just have to follow the manual, and then now, okay, you're going to buy a fungicide that is both preventive or curative, or even curative, just peke yake. And then from there, now they are going to indicate how often you're supposed to spray. Others will tell you 10 to 14 days. Others will be even longer, depending on what fungicide you have purchased. But what I want to say is this, is that there are also some, for instance, for those farmers who are doing nyanyas and waru is viazi, uh, uh, a disease like modingido. We normally call it modingido, but there's that bacterial wilt. The bacterial wilt, there's a way you can deal with it. Bacterial wilt, there are those products in the market that actually activate the immunity of the crop. So you're supposed to spray, not because there's a disease, but because you suspect, and so you spray so as to prevent. Mm-hmm.
So James, bacterial wilt, okay, I heard you mention the bacterial wilt, and I'm a potato farmer. So James, when I'm doing the bacterial wilt, when I have the bacterial wilt, or I suspect I'll have the bacterial wilt in my farm, will I use a fungicide?
Okay. Yeah, no. So bacterial wilt is not a fungus. Bacterial wilt is a bacteria, and that's why it's a bacterial. It's the bacterial wilt. So you're supposed to use something that is a bactericide that will kill the bacteria. And just to, there's one in the market that is called Enrich BM. Enrich BM does not prevent it. What Enrich will do, it will activate the natural defense mechanism of the crop to fight against the bacteria. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So one thing I have noticed is a difference between the fungal disease, specifically because we picked the fungal disease, and the insects. The insects you scout. It's important to scout.
One point before you go ahead, Grace, when you're scouting, you cannot scout something that you don't know how it looks like. So it's important for our farmers to get familiar with these pests
and the crop.
Yeah, and the crop, because you cannot go scouting for a cutworms and
you do not know how a cutworm looks like. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so one thing I remember saying information is power. So when you have decided as a farmer, I am planting potatoes, for example. If you're doing potatoes, one of the things you should know what affects potatoes when they're in the field. So when I'm doing potato farming, we are grateful for technology. We're in eras where you can just pick up your gadget and Google and just get to know what affects
A particular crop or
a
whatever
particular crop. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
you'll be growing.
So one of the things, you need to know what you're scouting for.
True.
Yeah,
Very,
and you
very,
really,
very, very true.
yeah.
But in the case that you don't know, then that's when now you can invite an agronomist.
An agronomist, yeah. In case you do not know, you need to walk the journey with an agronomist. By the way, farming is a process, and it also requires patience as you wait even for the crops to grow. So one thing I've noticed, for the fungal infections, you can use preventive measures before before the infestation of the, is it the infestation, before the disease um, attacks the crops, and then you can use curative measures. So that means if I'm using the preventive measures, I may even prevent the crop from getting the disease.
True, very true.
But if I'm using the preventive measures, James, do I use it every other week?
Uh, no, you don't use it every other week. You use it according to the instructions given on the label. Yeah, they've indicated, most of them will always indicate 10 to 14 days, but it's wise to follow through. And also there's also the issue of resistance. So you're not supposed to spray one fungicide for maybe more than 3 times, because you'll be creating the issues with the resistance. So you're supposed to keep on alternating them and changing them through.
Thank you. So one thing I have noticed, you need to keep checking on the instruction by the manufacturer. If he said he or she, if the company says that has released the product that you need to spray after 14 days, kindly do so. Don't do it every other week. It's important to follow the instruction if you want to see the results. Something else, I have, so the frequency is on the instruction. So that means we also need, as farmers, to be honest enough that we follow the instructions to the letter, whereby if we have been told the harvest interval is after 14 days, it is well in order to do so, so that we can take care of the consumers also who are consuming our products. So James, there are various bodies. I know we can handle this next time, but there are various bodies that govern all this, to the process that maybe they should help us, as they should help the consumer. That is by checking the residue levels that are there, because they're the recommended residue levels that are supposed to be there before they get to our farms. Are there such governing bodies in our country?
Indeed, there are. There are governing bodies that are supposed to protect the consumer, the end user. The Food and Safety Authority, they are there to protect us against what Grace mentions, the residues on the produce, because when you take those residues, obviously they will affect us negatively health-wise. So there are those bodies that even KEFIS has been involved in checking for the minimum residue levels, so that they can safeguard our health. So there are those bodies that are responsible for doing that in our country.
Wow, beautiful, amazing. So I think we are almost coming to an end of this discussion, but we'll not stop it here. We'll continue discussing more things, and even knowing why we have some of these pests and diseases. The problem can also come from the seed, like for the diseases, for example.
Very, very true.
So there's something called, we use what seeds again?
Certified seeds.
Yeah, certified seeds.
Yeah, certified seeds.
Yeah, I think the next discussion we'll have is what is the source of our seeds. And we are glad and privileged as a country also that we have governing bodies that have assisted us with seed certification, and they are well in play, because you move to agrovets, they even have a code for verification. And I think KEFIS is the leading in this, and they have done a beautiful job that we must attest to, because we have seen, you go to the agrovets and you'll find a KEFIS Okay.
a sticker. There's a scratch card that you scratch, and then you said you send the code to KEFIS, and then they'll be able to reply to you whether the seed is certified or not, and whether the seed is genuine.
Wow.
Mm.
So this also helps in the diseases and the pests.
True.
So the whole problem can start from that seed that
The
you're
seed
using.
itself.
So thank you very much, James. I will continue with this discussion and also now talk about the seeds and all these things that may also contribute for towards getting the diseases and the pests.
Mm.
Okay, all of them are the pests. Our farms being infested to a level that forces us to go to the agrovet and maybe purchase more of these chemicals.
True.
Yeah. So thank you very much, our viewers. Thank you very much, James, for also just coming and talking and also having this discussion. So we'll continue with this discussion and we'll get to know about the seed and the seed certification and how do you purchase your seed. So what we have learned today, we need for our pests, we need to scout for our fungal diseases. We need to start from the preventive measure to the curative measure, but walk the journey with an agronomist, as James advised. But also, the internet is very important as it's here to help and for us to get informed. Thank you very much for joining us. Till next time, I'll see you on our next sitting as we speak about the seeds that we're using and seed certification. James, any last words before we close the discussion today?
I'm just grateful for this opportunity and to share knowledge with our fellow farmers, even as we look to widen the scope of agriculture, the knowledge, and help each other. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Stay blessed and be productive.